Hello, my name is Owen, and today I'll be ranking all 10 books of Malazan Book of the Fallen. I just finished this series about 2 months back. I can't stop thinking about it, so I just wanted to go through all 10 of those books in my order of preference, 10 through 1. As I said, it was my first read-through of the series, so I know I missed a whole bunch of my first read-through. Probably even up to the last book, I missed 1,000 things, but I just wanted to give you guys my order as it stands right now, because I know during a reread, which I plan to do in the new year, will absolutely shake things up, but I just want to give you it as it stands after one read-through of the series. So what I want to do, I'm going to give you a few bullet points of why I put it where it is, and then tell you some of my highlights for the book, and then some of my lowlights for the book. This will be spoilers. I'm not going to go crazy spoilers, but there will be spoilers in this video if you have not read all 10 books. Or I guess if you haven't finished the series and you want to hear the books that I'm talking about, that's cool too. But my friend Paul here is with me to see it through this dense, amazing, epic series. Let's get right started. At number 10 is a controversial choice, Toll the Hounds. I've seen a couple other people's rankings, and usually Toll the Hounds is not the bottom one. A lot of people love Toll the Hounds, and I see why, because I loved all these books. Let me just get that straight out of the gate. But I put Toll the Hounds at number 10 because by far it took me the longest to get through. It's the 8th book in the series. I definitely had some burnout, probably just like trying to power through these dense books. And like all Malazan books, there's a lot of it where you don't really know what's going on, and this one was the worst offender. To be this confused in the 8th book of a series was really, really tiring for me as a reader, and it just really slowed things down. But don't get it twisted, because the ending of this book is top 5 endings of the series, right? Animander, Rake, Hood, Decim, oh, that convergence is one of the best convergences in the series. It was amazing, but I don't know why it happened the way that it did. I mean, I kind of know with Rake trying to bring back Mother Dark. I understand that part, kinda, but just the way it played out with like the way that he died and had to be killed, it was strange. And then like I just wasn't expecting that. Like I felt like I missed the build-up, but that's why it will definitely move up after a reread, because I will be catching the hints towards Rake's plan and Hood's plan throughout the whole series. But it just like, it was more like I was like reading it, be like, this is awesome, this is crazy, but I don't know why it's happening, and I feel like I should, because it was such an important part of the series. But even like Whiskey Jack leading the army of the dead, like that was awesome. Like it was a great ending. I just wish that I understood it. So some highlights, but I'm excited to reread it because I know the lead up will be so much better, and I'll understand a lot of it having the whole series in my back pocket now. But some highlights for the book, all the sections with the retired bridge burners, I loved it. It was so good, from like the shocking start of like the massacre. Was not expecting that. That was horrifying, and I loved it. Murillo, his story, I thought he was like fine in Gardens of the Moon and even Memories of Ice. Like I didn't really love him that much, but like Toll the Hounds, such a like, I don't know, man. It's just sad, but it was beautiful, and I loved it. Lowlights, the whole Black Coral story, rather. Keep in mind, I'm saying a lot of these words for the first time in my life. Black Coral probably makes more sense. But that arc is just, because the whole Mother Dark, Teast Andi whole storyline is very confusing to me. And that was like the first book where it was just like, the whole section of the book is about that. And I just was not mentally prepared for that. So a lot of it, I was like lost in like the new like religion that they were fighting, and I didn't get the reveal that it was I can't remember his name right now, but the guy from the first book, like his spirit. It went right over my head, and I only learned that from reading like somebody's review afterwards. So that kind of like it was a misfire from me as a reader. But like I said, having more things under my belt moving forward will be a lot make it a lot more of an enjoyable experience, I think. Moving on to number 9. Gardens of the Moon, the opener for the series. I think this is a pretty common area of rankings that I see for Gardens of the Moon, just because it's the first book. I've read that Erickson wrote this one originally as a screenplay, so it follows a little bit more of like Captain Paran, and like he was like the main like character, and that definitely shows because the structure is a little bit different from his other books. But people always say, like, when you're reading Malazan, like, you just gotta power through Gardens of the Moon because it's like overwhelming, and it is super overwhelming. But I wouldn't say that I had to necessarily power through it, because like, while I'm not understanding the nitty gritty, the individual scene by scene basis, like, it's just a great book. But I was confused, which for the same reasons I've told the Hounds. It just makes it hard to read. But I give a little bit more leeway than Told the Hounds because it's the first book, and I was expecting to be confused. And I think in a series like this, it's perfectly fine to be confused on the first book. I would say the main flaw to this book is that the ending didn't really make any sense to me, especially as a first-time reader. And even looking back to it, it feels a little weak with the Jagged Tyrant raising up. Like, I just felt like the buildup was going to be Rake and the Malazan army like meeting again in the city. But it wasn't that. It was the Tyrant, and he comes up, and they're in the party, and it just felt like a weird climax. And it worked, and it set up a lot of things, and I noticed that now, but it just felt strange to me. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. Like, even reading it at the time when I knew nothing, it felt strange, and even looking back on it, it's kind of interesting that was the ending, because it pays off a little bit, because the Tyrant comes back in like the Azath house, to my memory, and some other things like that, setting up the assassin, Ralik. It's a nom. There's noms everywhere. I think it's Ralik, right? It's Ralik. But that's why. So highlights for that: Paran, great character, like one of my favorites in the series, and this is before he even got even more badass. Whiskey Jack, obviously, fan favorite by everyone. He's just so cool, and it's the start of it all, so you gotta give it a highlight for that. The lowlights is the Jagged Tyrant, though. I just thought that was kind of a weak ending, and it kind of made me bored. Sorry. But moving on to number 8, we have Dust of Dreams. I put this one so low because it's literally just a setup to Crippled God, and Erickson even says, like, in the introduction that Crippled God is split up into 2 parts, the first part being Dust of Dreams, so it's not going to follow the same structure of a traditional novel with like the climax and the resolution and stuff like that. But it's such a long book, like, to not, and I felt like it didn't like have like a super like middle of the story ending, but it did have that a little bit. And in a Malazan book, like, you're waiting for the convergence, for everything to make sense, for everything to come together, and like knowing it from the very beginning that that's not going to happen. It stinks that it doesn't come at the end, but just like knowing that, you're just like, okay, well, then I'm just reading like 1,000 pages of setup, and it does feel like that sometimes. And it's also frustrating to me because the series is notorious for introducing new characters. We all know this, but to do it in the first half of the last entry of the series, like the first half being Dust of Dreams, it was just exhausting. And I was just sitting there going, like, really? Is this really necessary? Because I wasn't really enamored by any of the new characters, except for one, who is one of my highlights, and I'll get to, but it was just exhausting at that point. And I guess I'll go to my highlights. My highlights was Caliph in the Kachain Shamale. I thought that was actually really interesting. I thought she was a great character, and to spend more time with the Kachain Shamale, hopefully I'm pronouncing that at least semi-right, I thought that was very interesting, and I really liked their story, and their climax of the story with Gessler and Stormy, I thought it was awesome. It was super badass. And then obviously, like, the massacre of the Bonehunters, when they got caught in the middle of that war, it was horrifying, but it was a good ending, but not good ending for a Malazan book, because it wasn't an ending. It was a midway point. The lowlights, though, is, I think this is a common complaint, the snake. I mean, it's like a metaphor for something, for like children dying is like a common theme of like the horrors of war and stuff like that, and I understand it, but I didn't understand like the poems, like the whole thing with like the desert and the god of the desert and the butterfly moth insect thing. It just wasn't hitting with me, and I didn't care enough to think about it to try to figure it out, because I'm sure the answers are there, the answers are always there, but I just wasn't interested, and I thought it detracted. I thought there was a little bit too much time spent with them. There was a little too much time spent with the different factions of like the Barghast and like all that stuff. I just found it exhausting, and that really brought it down for me. But it did set up a lot of things. It made me excited for Crippled God, so it did its job. Moving on to number 7 is House of Chains. I think this one is also commonly rated pretty lowly among the series. But I thought this was the first book where I really felt like I was understanding, at maybe not the majority of it, but more than I previously was in terms of like character motivations and like overall arcing goals. Because the Crippled God is kind of set up as the main villain in Memories of Ice, but House of Chains, like you see more of his like minions, more of his plans, like who he's trying to manipulate and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I'm right there with it. I know exactly what's going on. I mean, I didn't really, because there's a lot of things I was confused about, obviously, because it's Malazan. But yeah, so it was the first book I really started to understand things. However, it got dragged down because it was kind of a slow read, if I'm being honest. Unlike most people, I loved Karsa from the beginning. I'm like, ooh, interesting. Like, we're following like a really horrible guy. And then eventually it's like, okay, redemption arc. And it's just like, I thought it was very interesting stylistically for him to spend so much of the book, like on like the beginning, maybe 4th of the book, maybe more, just with Karsa and like his entire character arc. And then the revelation that he's like Toblakai from Deadhouse Gates, who like I barely remember. And I'm like, there's probably a lot of emphasis on this Toblakai guy, and like I had no idea what he is, and I'm not even gonna explain it because he's getting explained 2 books later, and it was perfect. And I was like freaking out when I got the connection, and I probably should have got it sooner, but I didn't. But it was awesome. I really loved that part of the book. But then after that, I think it's really slowed down. And also, while I liked the Tavor and Malazan confrontation at the end, obviously, like, she kills her sister without her knowing that it's her sister who she'd been looking for since she sent her away. I love that part. Super emotional, super Malazan in terms of like the heart and like the sadness and of the whole story. But I thought the whole thing with the bridge burner ghosts, it kind of came out of left field for me. Like, I know they had the whole like Tano song, but it just felt like they were building up the battle, and I understand it's because like Erickson wanted the Bonehunters not to be tested until the Bonehunters book, but it just felt very strange that confrontation ended that way, and it was very anticlimactic for me, so it kind of like ended the book on a kind of like a fart rather than a roar. But highlights, Karsa Orlong, and also the speech explaining cold iron versus hot iron. I think the concept of being cold iron is so badass, and it's something that really stuck with me throughout the book. So, and this is the first book where they really like delve into it and actually explain it and give examples of it. It's just so badass, and it's one of my favorite concepts in the book. Lowlights though, the whirlwind politics. I wasn't really interested in the inner camp stuff. I thought Heberic, I really didn't understand like what his goals were. I honestly, he's one of my most confusing characters. I thought he was easy to understand in Deadhouse Gates, and after that, I kind of like lost any idea of what the heck this guy's supposed to be doing. But while I like him as a character, and I like Malazan the Younger and all that stuff, that whole like the priests and like the, I don't know, I just wasn't really that interested in it, and they spent a lot of time on that. Another low light might be controversial, but Troll and Onrak, their little adventure. And listen, don't kill me yet, because I know these are beloved characters, and I love them too, but their storyline, I didn't have enough context, and I didn't really know what they were doing or why I was supposed to care about them, which is kind of like I will get to that later, but I just didn't like them in this book. I wasn't very interested in them. I wanted to go back to my boys, my boy Fiddler. I want to go back to Kalam. I want to go to like Quick Ben, all of them, all the people I care about, and then I didn't want to spend time with these newbies who I was getting no context for. All right, and I'm done explaining myself for now. Number 6 was The Crippled God. I thought this was a very solid conclusion. I saw some reviews where people are like, I wanted a confrontation. I wanted a big battle. I wanted the Crippled God to be like fight them with all his minions and the wars and all to come together. But honestly, like, I wasn't surprised by the ending in terms of like being disappointed. I mean, I didn't know exactly what the plan was, obviously, but the Crippled God was never a powerful army. He was always just like a sickly guy whose followers were sickly. Like, they would have got destroyed in a straight up war. Even like if like Karsa somehow got bewitched to fight for him, like, he's not defeating the whole army. I mean, maybe he is, but it just wasn't set up that way. In the plan, like being revealed at the end, and the fact that it did make sense to me when it was like announced, was very relieving to me, because I was so worried that the book would end and I would be like super confused as to everything that happened, and that would have been very disappointing to me. Is that after 10 books I can't even understand like the whole point of it, and I have to do a reread just to understand the ending of the last book. That would have been horrible, but I did understand it, and it made me very happy with myself and with Erickson and with the series as a whole, and I thought it was a very satisfying ending. However, it's at number 6 because I thought there's a little bit of wasted potential with some of the characters we spent so much time with. And I understand, like, the book was already, with Dust of Dreams, 2,000 plus pages long, but I think you could spend a lot less time with the Snake and like with like the other armies that join the Bonehunters if you would have spent more time on maybe like explaining what the heck's going on with Gruntle. His ending, what was that? He fights Kalava and then the dragons come out and he dies to one of them? What's up with that? I thought that was very disappointing, honestly. I was expecting something bigger for him. And I know there's probably a metaphor in there, but my first read didn't get it. I didn't get it. And I thought it was kind of lame. I also thought Paran, like, obviously Tavor took a front seat about halfway through the series, but like Captain Paran, he's our boy from the get-go. And like, he was like doing a siege, and I wasn't exactly sure where he was doing a siege from, and he came in to do something, but I don't know. And a lot of people say like they wanted a confrontation between him and the Errant, you know, Master of the Files versus Master of the Deck. I think it's almost more badass that Paran was like, yeah, like you're so below me that I don't even need to confront you about it. And I think that's pretty badass. And I'm not as upset about that, but I think like as a character, like, I don't know, I just liked him being the main character, and it was kind of sad that when he took a back seat for me personally, but that's just a personal preference thing. Highlights: Shadow Throne and Cotillion's plan. The fact that it was revealed puts a whole new light on the entire series, and when I'm rereading it, when they come up, knowing what their goal is, it's going to make all of their scenes so much richer. And like Cotillion's already one of my favorite characters, so like it just makes it even better. Lowlights, another character that I think they spent way too much time on, Olar Ethel, like the bone caster woman who spent a long time with Torrent. I don't know what her deal is, man. Like, she's just like mean and evil, and then like we like spend so much time with her, like, for what? For what, right? I don't even remember like what happens to her. That's how little I cared about her. And they spent so much time with her, which we could have spent with people that we already know and care about. But other than that, I thought it was a solid ending. I don't hate the book. Going in at number 5, we have Reaper's Gale. This was definitely the conclusion of the Letheri like duology, the first being Midnight Tides. It's the end of the Sengar story, and I thought it was extremely well done. I thought it was an emotional climax, and it ended up the whole Rulad thing, and like, you know, Tehol and Bug and what they're doing. I thought it was a really solid story. It wasn't like the most standout to me. I didn't think didn't have the most wow moments. Like, I felt like even Told of Hounds had more wow moments, but overall, like, I was able to understand like what's going on mostly. There was a couple wow moments. Like, let's not forget like the Bonehunters March, how that ends with like I can't remember his name, the legend. You know what I mean? Like with the light, the candles. I forget that guy's name, and I'm going to hell for not remembering him because he's a hero. Raise him up. But that was awesome. That was definitely a wow moment. I just love the Bonehunters, man. And like their whole march was awesome. So some highlights for that. I redeem myself here. Troll and Onrak. Troll and Onrak is my highlight. It was my low light, and now it's my highlight, because at this point of the story, I understand them, and I like them, and I love their relationship. And it's just like, this book makes their relationship in Toll the Hounds richer. And it makes me like that book more in retrospect, because like their relationship is like, you know them now. And I really like that. Obviously like Troll's death is like so sad. And Troll is like probably one of the best characters in the series. So like me putting him as a low light earlier is kind of like really bad, but it's just like that book. I just didn't care about him yet. I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? All right. But he was a highlight here. Low lights, Icarium. Dude, I was too stupid to understand what's going on with him. At the end of that book, that climax, he did something like, he blew up like half the city. And everyone's like, you should know what happened, dude. Like, you should know. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what happened. And I barely knew what happened when they went back to him later on. Barely knew. I only half know now. He created his own Warrens. Did he do that on purpose? I don't know. Someone please explain it to me. Hopefully it makes sense the second time, but it probably won't. I will probably not understand a lot of things even after a second reread. So somebody please explain it to me. And also another low light is the whole thing with like the gladiator fights with Rulad, like who's gonna. It just felt very convenient for them to like put Icarium there, put Karsa there, and like you knew. Because like they kept saying like, oh, if he fights Icarium, like everything's gonna explode forever and ever. All right, so like, okay, they're probably not gonna do that. I mean, that'd be cool if they did, and I'd be interested in how Erickson would write about the apocalypse created by this fighting. That'd be interesting. But you knew Karsa was gonna beat him. Like you know Karsa's not going out like a wimp. He's gonna kick his ass, and he does, and it's a great scene. But it's just like it just felt convenient that like he happens to get picked up by this ship. He happens to get the arena. It's like obviously he's gonna beat him, and he does. And it's a cool scene, but I just felt like it was a little bit dragged out. Like we know he's gonna fight him, we know he's gonna win, and he does. Moving on to number 4, Memories of Ice. I felt like this book is one of the simplest structures of the book, which I actually enjoyed. A lot of the other books have obviously a lot of converging plot lines. You're not sure how they're all gonna match, and they match the end. You're like, wow, amazing. But this one is like very straightforward. They have to defeat the Panian Domain. I butchered that one, I know it. It's so stressful for me. But they just gotta defeat them, right? That's the goal. Defeat the cult empire. That's all you gotta do. Get to their headquarters, blow them up. That's the end of the book. Straightforward. So many great characters, so many powerhouses. Kaladin Brood, Animated Rake, Whiskey Jack, Kalor, the High King. They're all there in their glory. They're all fighting together. It's badass against a common, like, basically faceless enemy. Oh, it's just like you just see badass people do badass things, which I love, right? And all the new characters that were introduced. Because listen, after Deadhouse Gates, I was excited to get back to Whiskey Jack because I love Whiskey Jack. And then they introduced new characters like Itkovian and Gruntle, and I'm like, man, this could be bad. Oh, wait, they're the best characters ever. Itkovian is one of the greatest characters. He carries that book on his back. He carries it, just like he carries everyone else's sins or whatever he does when he sucks them in. It's so awesome. He's such a great character. The whole book, I loved him, and his ending was so sad. It made me cry. I don't know why I turned Italian there. But his quote, like I literally, side note, that my copy of Memories of Ice got torn up by a dog. So then, rather than throw away the whole copy, I cut out my favorite quotes. His quote about compassion, about how humans don't understand it because they guard the giving of it. I cut it out. I put it on my wall. It's been on my wall for 2 years because it's such a great quote. Such a great character. Man, I love it. And Gruntle's just a badass, you know? When he starts to like slowly become more powerful, you're just like, I'm with it. I'm with you, man. And that's why I'm just so disappointed about Crippled God and the way they ended him, because like his setup in Memories of Ice. I don't know why I'm speaking so fast, but great book. I loved it. And some people didn't like it. That's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that people don't like that book, but it's great. All right. Also, it was the introduction of like the Crippled God as like the big threat, right? So Quick Ben like finds out Burn is being like corrupted, all that stuff. I'm like, boom. I know where we're going, which is very nice in a series where I know very little. It was nice to know that. So some highlights, Tool and Talk's relationship. I also have quotes of there when he, at the end, when he doesn't recognize, or when Talk in his new body doesn't recognize Tool in his like reformed human body. I have that quote up there. The relationship is so wholesome and so beautiful. One of my favorite, and like Talk's, I love Talk. He's one of my favorite characters. And I'm so glad he keeps popping up even when he dies horrifically so many times. Obviously Whiskey Jack, we all know what happens to him. It's sad, you hate it. But you know, great ending for a great guy. And he comes back, you know, Iskar Jarek, he comes back, bigger and better. Not really, though. Moving on to number 3. We're in the top 3 now, guys. All right, time to focus up. Number 3, Deadhouse Gates. One of the best endings in all of fiction, right? This is some Greek tragedy shit going on here, right? Coltane, the chain of dogs, it does not get sadder. It does not get better. It does not get more epic. It does not get more betrayal than this. Listen, everybody knows it's a great ending, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But he was there. He was at the gates. They wouldn't let him in. Malazan Book, man. What a guy. What a guy. What a guy. He's on my shit list for sure. I don't remember what happens to him at the end. I think they deal with him in maybe an Esselmon story. I'll be reading those ones eventually. Don't you worry. But Malazan, man, what a piece of shit. Great book though. Duker. His plot line, he's a great POV character. I think one of the strongest POV characters in the whole story. Having a historian witnessing history and like trying to record it and like becoming a hero himself, it's perfect. And also, like Kalam is one of my favorite characters of all time. He's like gets a lot of screen time in this book. I would say I didn't love I don't know if he's Cutter yet then, but his storyline with like Apsalar, I didn't really understand a lot of like with the soul taken and all that. I don't really get it. But we're also introduced to Mappo and Ikariam, who their duo, when they're a duo, it's unmatched. It's so sad and it's so great. Mappo is one of the greatest characters. I didn't really like after they were separated, because obviously we were expecting a big like reunion, which you didn't really get, which is fine, but I just think that they're less interesting characters without each other. But I love their introduction. I quickly fell in love with them and their dynamic. So that was definitely a highlight, and obviously a highlight's Coltane and the Chain of Dogs. Lowlights, at this point, I don't got any lowlights. My top 3, they're near perfect books. I got no lowlights for Deadhouse Gates. Now, coming at number 2, Midnight Tides. This book could be a standalone book. It could have been the first book you read in the series, and it would stand up perfectly because it's a prequel, which is super interesting, making the 5th book a prequel, and the only character you know is Troll, who, remember, at this point, I didn't really like Troll that much, but I was glad he was there. He's a familiar face, and he became one of my favorite characters throughout this book because he's so earnest, and he's so genuine, and he's so relatable. I also really like how this is the story of two families and 2 sets of brothers, the Sengars and the Bedics, right? I think I like the Bedics a little bit more is because Tail is awesome, and Briss, he's like, all right, I'm gonna spoil my highlights. It's Tail and Bug and Briss. Briss at the end with Ruler. Whoa, that was that's my favorite scene, I think, in the whole series, the sword fight. When he cuts all his like tendons, he can't move. I was gonna say discombobulates. That's like the Sherlock Holmes ear slap. That's not what it is. I'm thinking about it tomorrow. It doesn't matter what the word is. But yeah, that scene is so awesome. And I liked how the Sengars and the Bedics, like parallel stories, equally engaging though, and then they were different. They were so different because like the Sengars, you got like the more wilderness atmosphere. They're going into like the Arctic to get like the sword, and then you got the Bedics in like the high city. He's on the roof, he's shirtless. What's going on? Oh, like tax fraud, stealing all your money. Versus like, in the forest, like wolves are attacking. You know what I mean? Like it's just like so different, but equally engaging. The climax, oh man, it's great. And that one's a sad one. That one's a sad book because it ends like in a very bad place. But it sets up. In retrospect, it sets up House of Chains, it sets up everything else. It's a Reaper's Gale, obviously, with all that stuff, and just like, it's great. And I almost wish Briss didn't come back, because he's such a good character, and like his ending was so poetic, but I did love that he came back because I like him so much, but also like, would his arc have been better if he didn't come back? I don't know. But he did come back for a reason, that's important. He came back for a reason to do something badass, which is, we love to see it. So finally, we have at the number 1 spot, you waited for it, the Bonehunters. I think this is a well-liked book. I don't know if it's everyone's favorite book, but it was my favorite book by far. It was so exciting and mainly because it had 2 climaxes. The whole scene, the burning city, Wygatan, I don't know, it doesn't matter. It's not about my pronunciation. The burning city, that part, that could have been the end of the book, but it was the middle. Leoman of the Flails, man. I had a lot of hope for you. You kind of just like killed a lot of my friends and then fucked off for the rest of the series. I can't even, it's so good. And then obviously, you thought that was good. Malaz City. Kalam, the entirety of the Claw attacking him, and he wins? He wins only to be poisoned by Pearl? Pearl, man. Pearl almost, I liked him. I almost liked Pearl, but then he had to poison my boy. My boy came back, but he had to poison him. He deserved his death. Lestari Yale, kill your lover, man. It's sad stuff. But honestly, the reason why I like this book so much is because, like, the Bridgeburners, obviously in the series, are like an established group. They're established legends. But we got to witness the creation of a new Bridgeburners, the Bonehunters. And we go through all the trials. They're untested. They didn't get to fight the Rebellion. They didn't get to fight the Whirlwind. But they had to go through the Burning City, Yuatan. They had to go through Malaz City. They had to defend the Wiccans from Malik Rel, that bitch. He's back. We get to witness them becoming legends, and it sets up the end, and that's why you care so much about their armies, because you witness the thing that makes them cold, and that makes them cold iron. It makes you love Tavor for sticking up for them, and it's so good, and that's why it's my favorite book in the series, and I can't wait to reread it and give you these rankings again, okay? I'm sorry that this was rambling. It's over 30 minutes long, but I just had to get this off my chest, and I will talk to you guys again about this series when I hit my reread. Thank you so much.